What is the fastest way someone has gotten onto your hit list? Me and the district attorney were in the judge's chambers discussing a case that was ready to go to trial. The judge was trying to pressure me into convincing my client to accept the DA's terrible plea offer. The judge then said, "We all know he's guilty. If you make me sit through a jury trial, I'm going to slam him when he gets convicted." The jury acquitted him after about 15 minutes of deliberation. But from that time on, that judge has been on my hit list. Hey, thanks for the gold. This guy I grew up with, who lived in the cul-de-sac a few houses down from my place, roughly 3 years older than me. He made my hit list faster than anyone else. I must have been about 12 when I saw this, but I went outside to find him chasing my dog around my yard, trying to kick her, and finally got her in the stomach. She let out a loud yelp of pain. He was laughing. He was always such a creepy little hit disturber. I went back in and got my trusty blue plastic bat and told him to get off my lawn or I'd make him. He came at me quick and I cracked him across the shins. As you might be able to tell, we never liked each other much growing up, but he always came around to pester me. You just don't duck with someone's dog, man. Edit. I'm a girl. Apparently some think that is relevant to this story. Hahaha. People who pull out in front of me when there is no one behind me for miles, then go under the speed limit. Old lady or not, seriously, WTF. 10 years ago, on the way to a meeting with my manager at the time, and we had to come up with a way to save money in our budget, I discovered we were not using the data deduplication on our backup systems, which would save millions in time and all the good stuff with a weekend of work to switch it over. She looks at me and says, "I have no idea what data deduplication is, so I will have to think of something else." So we go in and she gets grilled for being over budget, lack of planning, and she spits out, "I have very simple solution. We could turn on the data duplication option on the backups." Another manager pipes up, "You mean data deduplication?" Yes. She got promoted to my hit list. Having an argument with a former colleague about the validity and invalidity of stereotypes when he drops this bombshell. "You just believe that because you're a greedy Jew." In 4th grade art class, I needed to color a tin can. There was a girl named Georgia that had the silver crayon. I asked for it, and she broke it in half and threw it away. She would also scream and run away anytime she saw me. TLDR. Duck Georgia. Anyone who tells me to calm down when I am already relatively calm. Lived in an apartment cul-de-sac, and this guy built go-karts for his kids. They were really cool. Chromed out, but super loud. They'd do it for hours. Like someone was waving a gas-powered weed whacker outside my window. Must have been 80 units facing the parking lot. One day I just walked out and said, "Hey, just to let you know, we all hear this stuff pretty." He cut me off and said, "Just back off. These are street legal. There's nothing you can do. And who the duck are you to tell my kids when they can and can't enjoy their lives?" Blood boils, but brain steps in. Dart. Did you say street legal? Fuck me. I can't even hear my TV and I'm watching NASCAR. I don't see a dot sticker. Your kids aren't wearing helmets and the contraptions don't even have seat belts. Went to the management office and explained how they'll be sued successfully if any of those kids hurt themselves on the property. Asshole was gone in 2 weeks. Asked to leave. I guess we on each other's hit lists. Roommates dropped an entire roll of toilet paper into the toilet and, rather than throw it away, it did behind the toilet for me to find and clean up later. That made it to the hit list in more ways than one. Sat down beside me on the train. Elbows me 3 times because he wanted a seat to himself. Whenever someone pulls the race card, I'm aware I'm white, but that doesn't change the fact that you don't have your ID. So I'm sorry, you can't have your cigarettes. Met a friend who in 5 minutes of meeting her said something like, "You really don't know who I am? I do a blog on YouTube. It's kinda a big deal." Wouldn't have bugged me if she was joking, but she was clearly annoyed that I didn't know her. She also incorrectly corrected my Japanese later. I found her YouTube blog later. It was a big deal with views in the triple digits. Edit. Removed a later. Moved into a 5-bedroom flat with 3 new people. One person didn't turn up, so we all got to know each other and assumed it was just us. We set 3 basic rules. Number 1, don't be an asshole. Number 2, try to keep things tidy. Number 3, under no circumstances can anyone eat in the kettle. We had been drinking when this one was made, so this guy turned up the next day and moved in. First thing he does is demand a flat meeting to discuss house rules, so I kindly pointed out the 3 commandments on the kitchen notice board, which he promptly ripped up to start some fresh rules. Within 5 minutes he broke rule number 1. This is where my dislike for him began. Since then he has used my pans and other kitchenware without washing them afterwards. That's rule number 2. I'm just waiting for him to eat in the kettle. When my husband and I first got married, he wanted babies. So about a month in, we started to try. I got pregnant quickly, but lost it. This was repeated a few times. Tests were done and bad news all around. We had a really rough time. It was incredibly draining. We eventually decided to not have children because we didn't feel right about adoption, and fertility treatments weren't something we wanted. At his command's Christmas party, we were talking to a couple, and the guy's wife asked if we had kids, and I said no, we don't plan on having any. She turned to my husband and said, well, I hope she changes her mind and gives you a baby. I still dislike her. I hate people like her and I hope she steps on a Lego. Lesson: uterus contents are not up for discussion at social events, unless the event is about uteri. Even then, tread lightly. Bragging about drunk driving. Really? You got faded and made it home without a scratch? Duck you for making every other person on the street a player in your numbers game. It's called a turn signal for a reason. I always hate when people borrow my pencils and never give them back. So, to cope with this, I've started giving people my small, itty pencils when they ask because I don't care about losing them. So, one day, I get to class, and we have a new student sitting at a desk in front of me. He has his whole swag look going on, which gives me a bad first impression, but I brush it off because it's wrong to judge people. Next, the teacher tells us to copy a note, and this guy clearly didn't bring any writing utensil on his first day. Nice first impression. So he turns around and asks me if I have a pencil he can borrow for the lesson. I'm already starting to feel distaste for this kid, but I give him a pencil anyways. He sees it's a short pencil and gives me a dirty look. Seriously? He says. Hold on. Let me process this. You ask Emmy for a pencil because you were too ignorant to bring one. Then you give Emmy it because it's not a long one. Duck you. Edit. A word. Edit 2. To those of you calling me a passive aggressive asshole. You're right. If you don't like it, get your own goddamn pencil. Slapped my girlfriend's ass, then introduced himself to me. When you say as a mother, and then talk about something only vaguely related to parenting. I am a software engineer. He claimed to be a software engineer. Next sentence was that he couldn't write code. When I ask if I could have my seat back and the crazy H stabbed me in the ribs with a pencil. High school blows. Straight up lying about something I said while I was sitting there. Had a couple employees I was managing. There had to be someone in their office from 0500 to 100 as my boss dictated, and I told employee A, since he was there at the time, that they could work it out between themselves. When we picked up employee B, employee A looked at him and immediately said, "Want bourbon?" Said you have to start showing up at 5 from now on. I was literally sitting in the same car with the two of them. He'd constantly and intentionally misinterpret directions to his favor until he'd get caught. From that point forward, employee B became the one who got preference with everything. I went to pick up a pizza one time and there was a guy in there with his grown daughter. He was grilling the worker about whether it would have been cheaper to order a different special. From what I gathered, his daughter had placed the order and he was not satisfied with it. I can understand asking nicely to see whether it would have been better to place a different order, but he was being flat out mean to the girl working there, raising his voice and becoming accusatory. Then he starts yelling, "If you dropped $1 on the ground, would you bend down and pick it up? Would you? If I drop money on the ground, I bend over and pick it up. Same thing here." Then he walked out and got in a Ford Expedition, not cheap, and drove off. I was tempted to take out the $10 bill I had, look him in the eye, and drop it on the ground and walk away, but that would have meant not getting my pizza, and I love pizza. My roommate had a friend over. I was sitting in my room with the door open when she came in. This was the first time I ever met her. She looked into my room and said, "This is why you don't get laid." People that order quesadillas during the lunch rush at Chipotle. People that order for the entire office during the lunch rush at Chipotle. People that let their friends jump in line with them during the lunch rush at Chipotle. People that order anything that is not on the menu during the lunch rush at Chipotle. Pretty much everyone at Chipotle during the busy hours. My good friend had a girlfriend who I met briefly a couple times. One night we finally had a real conversation and she just started talking it about all of my friends like I was going to agree with her or something. Instantly hated her guts. Fast forward 2 years and we convinced him to dump her on Thanksgiving. She was the worst. Please, just throw those cigarette butts anywhere. You seem very important and I'm sure someone will be around soon to pick those up for you. I am a shorter, stockier guy with a beard. Friend, or who I thought was a friend, calls me at a party to come to a certain room where a bunch of girls are hanging out. I walked into the room and he says, "See everyone. I told you he looks like a Ewok." Everyone proceeds to look and laugh at me. Walk out of the room with my tail between my legs on the verge of tears. Some people can be so damn mean sometimes. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the gold. People that go on a rant about how modern medicine can't be trusted but alternative medicine can. That goes double if they have kids. There were these 3 kids that lived on my street during middle school. They were the morons who always tried to play games like Rochambeau and actually kick each other in the nuts for fun and gave everyone it, acting like thugs with their Jinko jeans and grunge shirts. Long story short, after I told them to blow off when they gave me it, they snuck into my yard in the middle of the night and killed my cat and put it on the side of the road to make it look like it was hit by a car. Neighbors saw them and told us they saw kids do it but didn't know who. Later one of them smugly asked, "Did you cry when you found out your cat was dead?" There was no way they could have known. That's when I discovered a rage in me I did not know existed. At the bus stop, I started pounding the kid that said it in the face till his friends pulled me off of him and I proceeded to go meth style rage onto them as well. Despite acting like thugs, they were the biggest pussies I've ever seen. No one gave me it all the way through high school. That's how I got into boxing and how 3 people joined my at list for life. 1. People who ask questions then interrupt the person giving the answer so they can say what they think the answer is. Usually these people are wrong. 2. People who ignore what other people say in conversation because they're just waiting for their turn to speak. 3. People who weren't there but heard one side of a story and think they know all the facts. When contradicted they respond with, "That's not what I heard." Apparently the truth is dictated not by what is in fact true, but by what the self-important genius hear. 4. Self-centeredness or an attitude of entitlement, infallibility, self-righteousness, or just generally being pompous. Thankfully all these types of people are all too eager to identify themselves, which saves me time. Staying at my house for too long. This one day in high school, my friend brought some habaneros to school. My whole circle of friends tried either a whole one or a piece of one and lo and behold, they were hot as duck. Anyway, this one kid comes over trying to act like a badass and asks for a pepper after seeing our paint faces. My friend who brought them denies him a pepper because where I live if a kid has an allergic reaction to food that you bring to school, you can get in some serious trouble. We had all tried habaneros the day before but not this kid. Later when we were throwing our trash away, this was at lunch, the kid takes one and eats it without us knowing. Half a block later everyone involved with the habaneros is called down to the main office for questioning and punishment. Most everyone got off with a warning, but my friend who brought the peppers got suspended. All because the kid that stole the pepper acted like a little itch and went to the nurse because he had a bit of a stomachache. Mind you, he wasn't any more reactive to peppers than anyone else who had one. We just dealt with the minor pain for the 30 minutes that it lasted and that was it. Not this kid. The worst part was just that he was acting like he was so tough and the peppers weren't hot. And then he was the only one that couldn't take the heat. TLDR. Little Itch tried to act tough by eating habanero at school. Many kids in trouble. Met less than 5 mins. I usually travel with my lockpicks to break in anywhere I can't get. I've been robbed twice. Itch got a talking to. At a bar with a group, some new guy hanging out with us decides to look at a text message I just got on my phone. Without my permission, he just picked up my phone and read it. In high school I was sitting with a group of my friends, most of whom I had known for 2 years. One of my friends was usually very motherly but nice at times. Let's call her Christina. The topic of dating came up and Christina's friend asked, "So who would you be okay with dating at this table?" Christina: "Everybody is pretty handsome here, except Tyrant Kronos. I don't think anyone has gotten on my at list so fast since." When your dog is off its leash, barking and growling at me but it's just playing, he's gentle. Told a friend I was going to see Elton John in concert and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it listed." New hire at my work started giving me orders and condescending to me about how this it-hole was run. I run the it-hole and I'm his boss. He thought he was replacing me. People that believe gay people are making the choice to be gay and can fix it. I'm totally in the middle politically and also a Christian, so I can deal with most anything and accept people's opinion, but homophobia is irritating to me and I can't understand people that can't understand that gay people are born that way and it's not a sin. Placed an ad on Craigslist for a car part. Got an email from a buyer in a town 100 miles away. Told me he was coming to my town in 2 weeks and wanted me to hold it for him. I called him and told him I wouldn't hold it, but if it was still available in 2 weeks I would give him a deal on it. He instantly blew up and started screaming at me. "What the hell is wrong with you? That's how we do things in this country. What are you? Some kinda stupid NIA?" Needless to say, I hung up immediately and ignored him when he tried calling back 4 times in a row. Instant it list. I was speechless and it still pisses me off. And no, I'm not black. Lol. Worked at an office supply store. They had this awesome comfy leather desk chair I really liked. The chair had a recall issued for the leather grain not being even or something dumb. My manager put the chair aside for me and said I could keep it since they were supposed to throw it out. Some new guy at work heard my story and just whips out his box cutter and starts going to town on the chair and laughing at me. Just a total asshole. I did nothing to this guy and just met him. Instantly got on my it list. There's this chick in my class last semester, known on campus as Crazy Susan, and she is the most unnecessary thing to ever happen to this planet. She once mocked a girl's uncle who was murdered 2 days before, and then when the girl finally lashed out, ducking Crazy Susan had a fit a 2-year-old would be disgusted by. She cried and sobbed on the floor and started accusing the girl of breaking her nose. A couple of my mom's family came over and while here they threw cigarette butts on the ground in our yard. I don't have many moments where I have to resist an angry outburst, but it took a lot of willpower not to tell them to pick that it up. So yeah, smokers. People's lawns at your ducking ashtrays. A new employee that I had never met attempted to tell me off in front of a client. I had been working there for a year, and it was her first week. I didn't take kindly to that. Let's say the speed limit is 55. You decide that you wish to do just such. 55. But you are going to live in the first lane. Now, I wish to pass, so I am going to do so on the right, because you are busy texting and such in your cruise controlled automobile. Fine. As I begin to pass you on the right, you speed up, as if we are racing now, and you look over into my automobile as if I have interrupted your busy life. People who pop their collar. One of my friends, a totally polite and friendly guy, thought it was the coolest thing to do. He stopped once he realized that people automatically assumed he was a douchebag. Being that guy in the bar who yells instead of speaks and laughs obnoxiously when he thinks he's said something even remotely funny.